You are listening to This is Oklahoma, hosted by Mike Hearn, telling stories of Oklahomans and those that have made it their home.
This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof. Let's get into today's episode. What's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of This is Oklahoma. Mike Hearn here, your host, back with another episode in Oklahoma City today with Mr. Oklahoma City, which you were once called. Lee Allan Smith was inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 1994, but you were called Mr. Oklahoma City in 1990, which was the year I was born. So I don't want to age you or anything, but I mean, 1990 is a good year. So
thank you, son.
Thank you for having us in your home today. I really appreciate it. Excited to share your stories. I'm sure we're not going to get to all of your stories because there's a lot. You've done a lot of really cool things. But I want to start with kind of your upbringing in Oklahoma City and in Oklahoma and I mean what you were like growing up and kind of what your dreams were when you were a little kid.
Well, I was born in 1929. It seems like, well, it is what it is. But I went to Wilson Grade School and Harding Junior High School, Classen High School. Then I went to the University of Oklahoma, and after graduation, I was in the service during the Korean War. During the Korean War, they sent me to Vienna, Austria, and from there went to Munich, Germany, and then to Tripoli, North Africa. Mm-hmm. So when I came back, I went to work for a while with a group of people that I worked with during college, and that was Parks Clothiers and menswear and Sturm's clothing as well.
Yeah.
And shortly after that, there's a fellow that came in that wanted to buy a tie, and he was the manager of WKY Radio, and he left buying more than a tie, so he went back, and that's when I started at Channel 4 and WKY Radio.
Yeah. What got you interested in broadcasting from a young age?
Nothing, except it was a job, but it was more of an exciting job. I saw some future to it as far as developing ideas and thoughts, which I've always tried to do. I had three brothers, all older brothers, and they went in the service right when I was kind of about to enter. I was in junior high at the time, and war was going on, and my mother was there to raise me, and I think she did a pretty good job. But my father during the war was killed in a hotel fire in Wichita, so she had to do the raising the three brothers that were kind of my tutors.
Yeah.
And good friends were all overseas. Mm-hmm. Two of them.
And then going to OU, why Oklahoma University? Why did you choose to go to OU instead of anywhere else?
Well, before my father passed on, I went to a few OU games back when Indian Jack Jacobs was playing and many other stars I could name, but I just kind of fell in love with the Crimson and Cream.
Yeah, still a huge fan today?
Still am, very much so.
Yeah, it's amazing to see, even just the time I've been here, amazing to see the stadium transformation and the other facilities that have been made, and having 74,000 people for a spring game is mad.
They continue
right?
to improve and land up on their 2 feet when they meet a little difficult problems to solve. And today, Joe Castiglione, the athletic director, has done a great job, and I think they're on their way with Coach Venables.
Yeah, it's gonna be exciting.
Of course, there's more to it than that. Softball too, which you don't want to leave out for women's softball.
Right. Yeah.
Or basketball, for that matter.
Yeah, and Patty is being inducted this year, I believe. So, yeah. Which is, I'm excited. I want to meet her. She's an interesting woman, and obviously
she's
her
a star in her own right around here.
Yeah, it's definitely. I don't know. She's an institution in Oklahoma, right? So which is awesome to see. When you go into broadcasting, because it seemed interesting and you wanted to go and it was fun to do. Did you see yourself staying in it for a long time, or did you think this is something I'm going to do and then we'll figure it out from there?
I started feeling really good about it from day one.
Okay.
And moved from radio into television, and was the general manager for several years before I went to then Ackerman McQueen. But there was just so many things that you could do in broadcast and create ideas and thoughts and programming. And for example, the OU softball game sometime recently. It was not on TV. I hoped it never happened when I was out there because we've been paying for it to play it live and have it on, and not be void of that opportunity.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's there's a lot of things that you probably saw that went wrong that you managed to figure out, but a lot of things that went right, and doors open, green lights happen, boxes are ticked.
And just take the Olympics when we had them. We sent our sports people over there.
Yeah.
And we were the only ones, I'm pretty sure I'm right, that did so.
Yeah.
But when I was at Channel 4, I was being under the ownership of the Gaylord family. They encouraged me to be involved in the community, and that's when I really started doing what I wanted to do and like to do anyway to support Oklahoma City. And the first one basically was the YMCA because it was near us on Britton Road. Mm-hmm. But the main one at the beginning was United Way, mm-hmm. which is, I think, the premier institution or nonprofit agency in the city.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
55 agencies that do marvelous work.
Yeah. So you mentioned kind of what you really want to do is be in the community, help Oklahoma City. Looking back at the things that you've done, which we'll touch on today, but you obviously have a huge love for the arts community and the city as well. Where does that come from? Why do you want to help out Oklahoma City? You could have just kind of enjoyed your work and gone about your business.
That goes back to my mother and my brothers. I thought my three brothers going to the service, I thought that's when I started feeling great now about Oklahoma City, but about the whole state and the country. But she was quite some lady and very Christian lady, and she was very encouraging to me, and I could do no wrong. And she, as I'd leave, be picked up by some friends, she'd yell out, "You all be good Americans," and they always kind of got a kick out of that. Be a sweet boy. So I guess some of that rubbed off and made me want to do the things that I've tried to do. Mm-hmm. Which whatever I've done is not enough as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
Excuse my voice.
That's powerful to I mean, just looking at your bio, and for everyone listening, I'll put it in the description, that you feel like you haven't done enough. You've done a lot of really amazing things for the city.
I want to point out when you say I or you, or it's very, very true that you surround yourself with good people. Mm-hmm. None of these things or anything that I've done that you can call attention to was not done by one man or one guy. We had an Olympic Festival, when Clay and I were involved in that, we had 10,000 volunteers. And you had to get them, you had to find them, you had to make sure they had their T-shirts on everywhere they went. But it takes your surroundings and your people. It takes leadership from those under the head guy mm-hmm. as well.
Yeah. What was that first big kind of project and big, was it, I assume, I mean, we'll talk about the Olympics in a second, but what was that first community project that you worked on that, you and built a team around you to do something for Oklahoma City?
Well, I think I would start by saying we had a lot of promotions at WKY radio and television that were significant, which kind of fed us into things to do for Oklahoma City. Mm-hmm. It started with not little things, but I remember we bought 77 trees to put at the state capitol grounds, and we got a sponsorship for each county, and they didn't water them, so they died. So that wasn't as successful as we wished it had been. But I think Senator Bellman was the governor at the time. But I had developed at Channel 4, at least, when I was there, I think the biggest one was the Stars and Stripes show, which that was right on the heels of some assassinations in our country. Mm-hmm. And I felt that this city and state were very patriotic, and it went well. We ended up on the 8 years that we did it, six of them were on NBC nationally. Yeah. We kind of forced that because we had some stations all over the country we picked up to carry it. So most of them were NBC affiliates, so they saw the writing on the wall that they might as well come aboard. But they were proud to come aboard because we were number one in those, generally in our time slot. We had Bob Hope and Dionne Warwick and on and on and on. It'd take too long to tell you all of them, but Charlie Pride and Dionne, magnificent talent.
Yeah.
And I think the most impressive part of that was not only being a part of it and everybody liked it, but the letters that came in, particularly, believe it or not, from the East, from Boston and Connecticut and all around, talking about how wonderful it was. And one funny story, we've had astronauts before, and we had Red Skelton one year, and they called from Washington. They started about 3 years after we did with a patriotic show in Washington, D.C., and they said, if we fly this astronaut out there, would you let Red Skelton come early? So we were taping it at the time and going to rerun it, so we were able to work it out. But it was kind of fun to be trading talent with Washington for their show.
Yeah. For people listening that don't know or haven't heard of the Stars and Stripes, so what was the basis of it, and kind of why did you start it?
Well, as I said, Kennedy assassination, Martin Luther King assassination, and just felt like something needs to happen to pick us up where we should be as far as our country is concerned. I don't want to say I wouldn't do it today, but what would happen today. But then it was very well received and heralded, and awards everywhere for the team that produced it and brought this talent in, and we were very proud of it.
Yeah. Some might say you might need to do that show again recently, during current circumstances.
There's a lot of fun things that happened during that time, and getting those people to come here.
Yeah.
We had some rock and roll folks and all coming in, and they were kind of, I forgot what they called them, hippies, I guess you might say. But we had a lineup through those 8 years that was quite something.
Yeah, working on a project like that with such a national significance, and the fact that you're bringing people here as well, that's exciting. Not just for for you as a person to be involved, but also for Oklahoma to bring people here as well.
We talk about those that were in the show, and we're talking to people now that maybe never heard of Kate Smith, who was known big time for her "God Bless America." Look it up. But many of those you wouldn't know. People have heard of Bob Hope, I'm sure, and many of the ones I can name. But it's kind of interesting when you're talking to young people like you.
Yeah. Only when you look them up do you realize their significance at the time and
Kenny
how
Rogers,
important they were.
That was a good one too. He was kind of a good catch because of his popularity with the youth at the time. I remember I was in Chicago and he was playing a little pub there, and I was able to talk myself backstage to him, and I won't tell you what we paid him, but it wasn't very much, but we had a great time.
Yeah.
He was terrific. We had sports stars come in too, and we had some good ones that you see sports stars like Mickey Mantle or Johnny Unitas and on and on and on. Me and Joe Green, and again, you've never heard of him maybe, but he did a Coke commercial. But they were wonderful people and very patriotic, and my favorite was Johnny Unitas. He and his wife were fantastic, and everybody loved all of them. We had a golf tournament while they were performing or rehearsing for the show, so it was a fun experience.
Yeah. What was Oklahoma City like during those 8 years? Like, was it?
It was great back then, just like it is now. I mean that. I mean, there's nothing like it is today. We know that with the MAPS programs and all. But I loved it back then when we had the streetcars, real streetcars, going down the middle of the track, and not just downtown. They're coming out to Edmond or Eckers. I get on near my home at 20th Street, and hop it on, and go to my friend at 39th Street on Classen Boulevard.
Yeah.
So they had the John A. Brown and the lights downtown. That John A. Brown was where the Santa Claus was. There was only one in town. But I'm just saying, it was, for me, it was a beautiful city at that time as well.
Yeah, exciting. A lot of opportunity, kind of still now.
Still a lot of opportunity.
Yeah. Yeah,
as soon as we get a hub, and as soon as we get a real nice amphitheater, and hope that everybody gets along better.
Right. During those 8 years of doing the Stars and Stripes show, who was kind of somebody that I guess you wish you could have got on that didn't, or someone that was supposed to come on the show that had to reschedule that never came on?
We had one lined up, and he was kind of excited about it, and that was Elvis Presley.
Yeah.
And he had that patriotic song, wonderful song he sang, and the Colonel at the last minute, he had a bigger deal, he thought.
Yeah. That would have been a great chance to meet him. I think we're going to interview Wanda Jackson soon, right? Who went on tour with him. That's going to be exciting too.
Yeah, that should be great.
Yeah, but she's another treasure.
Yeah, he was hot on WKY at the time with Danny Williams spinning the records.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
3D Danny, which again you don't know who that is.
I went to Elvis's house. I didn't think I'd enjoy it, but I had a great time walking through his house in
Memphis.
In Memphis, yeah, it was a lot of fun, and to have someone of that caliber, I was scheduled to be on the show.
He's
but
one of a kind.
Yeah, definitely. What about people who came through that you didn't expect them to be very interesting, but they turned out to kind of be one of the best guys you had through or girls through? Anyone who surprised you?
Well, there were two that I think of. That is Nancy Wilson, singer, and another one was Juliet Prowse, dancer as well. There were a lot of them that came that we got that we didn't know for sure how it was going to work, but they all worked great.
Yeah. You mentioned earlier the U.S. Olympic Festival. Tell me a little bit more about that, kind of how that came about and just how that was as an experience.
Well, again, there's a lot of the Chamber of Commerce in Oklahoma City is very important to the community too. It stands out at the top. But their leadership, along with myself, went to Reno, Nevada to bid on it. And it was going to be the year of '89, which was the 100th anniversary of the run. So we thought we had a good chance, but had no idea for sure we'd get it. And I remember one time Clay Bennett went with us, and I was the chairman of the committee. But Clay came along, and extremely important part of our being doing this. But we got selected. We were watching the OU Nebraska game at Lincoln that day in a room where the judges were there, and I had it worked out where Barry's going to call right at the right time after the game was over, which we won. And he was just saying, good luck to you guys, I hope you get the bid and all that stuff. And that was kind of exciting. He kind of helped play the role in success.
Yeah.
And then we got it, and now it's history, and it was fabulous. And those that got to see it, the opening ceremonies in Norman, Oklahoma, the packed crowd was unbelievable. And we ought to air that sometime on TV again, because it was a fantastic show with President Reagan here, Bob Hope here, James Garner. It went on and on, Reba McEntire, Vince Gill. And that was 1989.
Yeah.
And so a lot of those from Oklahoma, except for Bob Hope called it his third home after Cleveland and England.
That's amazing. That's to have that in Norman, to be a university grad of OU, to bring that in.
I think it kind of led the way to, I hope, to Clay to be successful in his endeavors to get. He started out trying to get a hockey club, but I'm glad we didn't. Oklahoma City did not get it.
Yeah.
I like the way we are now.
Yeah, I agree. Having a basketball team's much better than an ice hockey team.
So much so, yeah.
And we've had some great players and great fan base.
It's amazing how many we've had. You watch the playoffs, you see somebody that played here.
Yeah.
On every team.
Yeah, you wish they never left.
No,
right?
You can't have 35.
They seem to go and play better elsewhere, which is not fun to watch. But dive deep into kind of like bringing. I'm fascinated to know like the logistics of bringing the Olympic Festival to Oklahoma City to Norman? Like what does that entail, and all the things that you were working on that a lot of people would never know? What are those like fascinating intricacies that you worked on and details that
again, thank goodness for telephones and through connections or somebody else knowing somebody to let me use their name or whatever. We did it all on the phone. We didn't do any travels or that sort of thing to get all these folks. Same way with Centennial, it was all on the phone. When you brought in Carrie Underwood and Garth Brooks and Reba and all the stars that you can name from Oklahoma, including the star of Oklahoma, Shirley Jones.
Yeah.
She's not from Oklahoma, but as far as we're concerned, she was being the star of Oklahoma with Gordon McRae at the beginning.
Yeah.
But a lot of it's just who you know and the connections you might have, and we sold them on it, and we didn't oversell it because it was it was wonderful. The closing ceremonies back to that Olympic Festival were pretty well star-studded as well. With star Ray Charles was in the closing.
It must be amazing. I mean, all the people that you've named here, you know, Vince, Reba, Ray Charles, Bob Hope, like, what's it like to be around these, I mean, mega stars at the time, and still some of them stars today? You know, sometimes it makes you feel uneasy, but sometimes it might make you feel normal because they're just normal human beings. But
most of them are, and there's people like John Davidson and others that have a name, but we had a host couple for every one of the talent. So they picked them up at the church on time, so to speak. They got them where they need to be for rehearsals or for dinner or whatever it was. And this day, I have people talk to me about, I really enjoyed taking care of Gene Cernan, the astronaut, or Alan Shepard. It was a great thing for us because they showed them the hospitality of Oklahoma City, which was a tremendous asset for us. They went away. There are times that I've seen where they go from here, they go to St. Louis or Kansas City or whatever, and they're doing publicity for them, and they mention having been to Oklahoma City and the great time they had. As an example, we had Will Rogers Follies here one time. Great cast. It was during Thanksgiving, so we set up. We had dinner at the state capitol inside. Gave them that experience, and the other major highlight, we had tickets for them to the OU Nebraska game in the afternoon, and we just took good care of them. And they were commenting on that. Yeah. When we did the dome, not dome dedication, but opening of the Civic Center Music Hall, Jimmy Webb and Feinstein were there, and the electricity went out. We had the Philharmonic up there, and they were walking off the stage, thought it was not going to work, and Mayor Humphreys at the time and myself got out there and said, "We're going to be on here any minute." Da, da, da. Well, they performed in the dark with flashlights going, and they made a comment when they went to the next station they went to, was talking about how great Oklahomans were to get it going, and it was the most fabulous show we ever saw, despite our tornadoes outside.
It's there's so many, what you just said, there's so many stories like that through the years of Oklahomans just being hospitable and going the extra mile for no other reason than the fact that they want to, right? They want to show you a good time. They don't get anything out of it. It's volunteer everything. And that's why I love being here. It's part of who Oklahoma is and who Oklahoma City is.
There are two fellas that you talk about running around. We had hosts for them. I didn't spend that much time with them, except for people like Johnny Unitas and Ed McMahon, and the other one was Tennessee Ernie Ford, was unbelievable. He is about as fine a gentleman you ever saw. He was right here making cornbread. He was so natural guy. So we had a wonderful time with a lot of them in that arena. I will say the most important part of all this to me is having the money to do it. And so the real heroes are the donors, the ones that allow you to do what you do and do it well, and and do what they say they're going to do, and do for them what you promised you were going to do in the way of recognition.
Mm-hmm.
And that's extremely important, and that's what's been able to maintain getting things done by
Mm-hmm.
treating the donors properly.
You mentioned the Civic Center, the music hall. Tell me about kind of opening that and that whole process, because that is, I mean, I've been to shows there. It's a beautiful building. It's right in the middle of downtown.
Yeah, the acoustics were so great after the grand reopening.
Mm-hmm.
It was. Of course, it went from 3,200 seats to, I think, 28.
Mm-hmm.
I believe that's what it is. What it was now. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about it, and you got to just say the facts, don't you? But one of the stars one night was Bill Cosby, and I won't go any further right now. But we had some good talent. We had talent in Herman Miner's mirror room, and we had it in Josie Freedy's little theater where WKY was originally before I came aboard.
Mm-hmm.
But we had a lot of great talent, high school talent, and college talent, and My Sinatra. We found that in New York off Broadway, and it was a wonderful grand opening. Kristen Chenoweth opened the show with the OU band, and she was grand. She did There's No Business Like Show Business, and back then, that far ago, you know how well she's done since. So maybe we got it started. I don't know.
Yeah.
No, she was already on her way.
Yeah, she's great. She
fabulous.
is really good.
Fabulous.
Yeah. The other thing that you had to played a part in was the Oklahoma City Zoo, right?
Yes.
Tell me about that, and where does animals and the zoo fit into everything else that you've done? Because it doesn't seem to go together, but back to Oklahoma City.
Well, I can tell you a little bit about that. The cause of it was that when I was stationed in Tripoli, there wasn't a Gaddafi there. There was a guy by the name King Idris, Idris.
Uh-huh.
And he asked the general and I was special service then,
Mm-hmm.
he asked me to start a zoo. And he'd give us the first animal, the Wadan, I think it was. So we opened a zoo. And so that kind of connected me with animals. And so on another thing, over at Tripoli, we did a Ghibli go, if I may stray, we did a Ghibli bowl game. Ghibli is a sandstorm, which is really bad. It's kind of a little tornado with the sand blowing in your eyes.
Yeah.
When you're umpired and they say you're blind, I said, I know it. But it was, where are you going to get the players to come? I said, well, there's teams in France and Germany where some of the guys that are special service officers there. I was at school with them in New York before we went over there.
Yeah.
Anyway, we were at a baseball game and the general that was head of USAF, United States Armed Forces in Europe, was named Tunner, General Tunner. And somebody gave me his number at home, and and his wife answered. We talked a long time. He wasn't in it at the time, so we had a great conversation. It turned out the connections I'm talking about. His wife was from Enid, Oklahoma.
No.
So when he came in, he said, "Honey, I want you to do whatever this man asks you to do," and that was getting two teams to play in this Ghibli Bowl game, and we did in a little small stadium in Tripoli downtown, which. The king was there, and it was a great experience for everybody. First time they ever saw American football on Thanksgiving Day.
Wow.
So I strayed from your question.
No, that's fantastic.
So back to the zoo here.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, actually, I kind of want to stay talking about Tripoli. That's
I just always loved the zoo,
amazing
and
experience.
the directors out there that I was with early on with Larry Curtis, and that went to different ones, but they were all great. One of them is now head of the zoo in San Diego, which we all know is a great zoo. Mm-hmm. Ours is a fabulous zoo as well, not just the animals, but the beautiful flowers and shrubbery and all the landscaping that we have there. Yeah, there was only one disappointment, and it was a great thing at the beginning because we raised a lot of money, but it's a sad thing for me that we lost the dolphins, and it shouldn't have happened. when I was in California on broadcast business at the time, and I'd go see the dolphin show, I thought how unfortunate it is that our young kids that many can't travel to go see these animals, these fantastic mammals. We got it done here, and it was unbelievable. Still have seals out there, but it was a delightful experience for these children to be able to see those dolphins.
Yeah.
Someday, maybe it'll come back.
Mm-hmm. Go back to playing football on Thanksgiving Day in front of King Idris. Go back to that for me, because that to me is fascinating.
Well, I still have the pictures I look at.
Yeah.
And, we created a mascot for them. We had a donkey. We had a camel for each team. It was the Ramstein Rockets and Ryan Main Rockets and the Ramstein Rams. We had a ram, that's what. But it only seated about 10,000 people. But we had volunteers there passing out the programs. We gave them a fez with a Ghibli bowl on it, a fez.
Yeah.
And everybody just had a ball or tickled to death. And the best part of it is that our general liked it a lot. Speaking of connections, if I may, the base commander was General Ron B. Anthus.
Okay.
And I didn't know at the time, but he was from El Reno, Oklahoma. So things turned out pretty well.
Yeah.
Particularly since I, at OU, dated his niece, Anna Claire Anthus. And so we had some good ties.
Yeah.
A lot of show troops, because that was a pitiful place to live there. With the heat. The daylight saving time about 5 hours different.
Yeah.
Terrible place. We had a good time.
Yeah.
Built a golf course there for the general, and a week later a jet crashed in on a number 1 tee. So it was problems along the way, but you figured out what to do about it.
Yeah. I know we could sit here for hours and you could tell stories for a lifetime because you've seen so much of the world. But one of the things I know that everyone who knows you knows that, and you've mentioned the word connection so many times just now. How do you go about continuing to build those connections and maintaining those connections? Because there's a lot of people listening who they might meet someone for the first time, and if they use their brain and take full advantage of meeting that one person, that could unlock so many other things. You've managed to maintain all these relationships over the years, and I've heard from Jenny that it just takes one phone call from you to make something happen and make a decision, because you've met all these people and maintained these relationships sometimes. But how do you go about, that's a real skill to maintain those relationships.
Well, I haven't figured out that exactly, but I call them a lot of times when I don't need anything.
Yeah.
That helps. I just said that. I'm trying to find an answer to your question, but I stay with them. If I have a friend of mine, Don Klossmer, is the general manager of the Rams, Los Angeles Rams. When I was stationed together with him, we stayed in connection. So when I had a golf tournament, he'd bring in John Brody, or he'd bring in a star that, again, you wouldn't remember.
Yeah.
But it's just fun to stay active, and the more you get, when you get older, like Jenny, we made a connection, as we do with others in the chamber or the Rotary Club or whatever it might be.
Yeah.
But I'm not trying to say that I don't want to use the word "I" that much, but I'm just saying connections are important.
Very.
And not only for bringing him here as a star, but or getting somebody's dollar to pay for it. During the Stars and Stripes show, I might add that they got in free if they were wearing red, white, and blue for a while. But we did have sponsors. And the proceeds, the first year, went to building a Stars and Stripes Park, which is here still going well. And the other, next year, we gave to Langston University for radio equipment. So you try to do things good for whomever, and and still be successful with your project.
Mm-hmm. I have a couple more questions.
Okay.
I want to ask you about the day that you got the phone call that you were going to be inducted into the Oklahoma Hall of Fame in 1994. What do you remember about that day?
I think I was coming back from Norman, meeting with somebody about something to do with a spring game. I think I'm not sure what it was, but I remember, and I meant this, as most everybody says. You didn't deserve that. You got more to do than what you've done to be placed in that prestigious organization. But I'm very, very proud of it, and I'm proud of everybody that goes in, and there's plenty in the future that deserve to be in, and they're being born every day.
Mm-hmm. Do you remember who introduced you that day? Introduced you on stage?
Ed Gaylord.
Yeah.
Yeah. Ed was my first real employer, and encouraged me in every endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
And while I wasn't that close to him that much until he sold it to the station, and I remained as manager there.
Mm-hmm.
We got closer then. But he always gave us everything we needed, as I think I've already said, to be successful.
Mm-hmm. And the last thing I want to ask you is, we recently had the Lee Allan Smith Awards, right, at the Oklahoma Hall of Fame. The market at East Point, everyone who was involved with that was given the students got the awards.
Oh yeah, I had several calls about that.
Yeah. I think
special.
it's probably great for you to see the younger generation
That's
follow
fantastic.
along in community and kind of give back. And
I mean it sincerely. It was the minority that was involved in it. It was very special. Leonard Benton, who's now involved in remodeling the Freedom Center out next door to where the on Martin Luther King, on the Clara Looper building that the MAPS is supporting, called and said how delighted everybody in his community were about that presentation.
Yeah. So you're involved in the Centennial celebrations.
I was with Blake Wade, who was the executive director of the commission, and I was in charge of the projects and programs. And it was a long, long job. We started it early on when we unveiled the dome at the Capitol, and many, many projects throughout the years leading up to 2007.
Mm-hmm.
We had a lot of highlights. I'll just name a few. We went to New York to put in our bid for Macy's. We got that for 3 years. First on the float was Christian. The second year was Sandy Patty from Oklahoma, lives here in Oklahoma City now. And the third was the OU Band. Mm-hmm. That was the year after the Centennial. Then we went to Macy's. We went there to get one float. We ended up getting 2 floats, the band and the opening ceremonies with Kristen Chenoweth and James Garner and Miss America from Oklahoma, Jennifer Berry, going down. We had a highlight with Rocket Man. We had the Rocket Man take off from our float, flying up into the air and coming down and opening up the Centennial flag of Oklahoma.
Yeah.
So it was very exciting, and won a nice award for Extraordinaire Award.
Mm-hmm.
The parade was fantastic. We had just a month before, about a month before the big deal, the big occasion. And the Centennial evening, the show at the Ford Center, we had everyone that you could think of from Oklahoma that put on quite a show and celebration, and then we had the after party with the fireworks. But we had Carrie Underwood and Garth and Reba. I think I mentioned that already. But
yeah, that's fantastic.
Back to that thing I'd like to remember most about, back to that Libby Festival, at the opening was Roger Miller, who is a great Oklahoman.
Yeah. There's a lot of state pride, right? And it's so many. When you put them together, you realize how much talent we have in this state.
I know Clay heard a lot of things from a lot of people, but I never will forget walking out of that stadium that night of the Olympic Festival, and this little boy looked up at his dad and said, "Just think, Dad, I'm from Oklahoma." That did it for me. That was great.
Yeah. Other than that moment, what are you most proud of over the events and the bringing people here and the community stuff that you've done? Like, what would you say is your most proudest moment?
Today, just looking back and knowing that they were successful and the people supported them, and made us all more proud of all the Oklahomans who supported it, not only financially but in attendance.
Yeah.
It's hard to say which one was really the best, because along the way you have a few little bumps. You got to figure out how to handle them, but I still haven't handled the Dolphins.
Yeah. And then last question, and this is for me on a personal basis because I love playing golf. What's your favorite golf course in Oklahoma?
That's a good question. I played more at Quail Creek than any place because I was kind of I was a charter member, and it kind of was my home there. I think the Oklahoma City Golf and Country Club is fantastic, and Twin Hills had the PGA there. Arnold Palmer won one year, and that's fabulous as well.
Yeah.
I don't want to leave anybody out. There's a lot of good ones.
Well, Mr. Smith, thank you so much for your time. Thank you for having us in your home.
I'm happy to have you, and it's Lee Allan.
Okay, I appreciate that.
Mr. Smith was my dad, as they say.
Thank you, Lee Allan. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
For people listening, I'll post links to Lee Allan's bio in the Oklahoma Hall of Fame and all of the amazing things he's done, and we will catch you next episode. Cheers. This podcast is presented by the Oklahoma Hall of Fame, telling Oklahoma stories through its people since 1927. Follow them online at oklahomahof.com and definitely on Instagram at oklahomahof.
Thank you for listening. We are inspired by those around us and hope that you are too. Make sure you subscribe to this podcast on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review so we can keep telling your stories. For more great Oklahoma content, follow This Is Oklahoma on Facebook and Instagram.